There was about 3.3 million deaths in the United States in 2020, and COVID-19 was the third leading cause of deaths, only behind heart disease and cancer, and it took about 345,000 people. But there was another deadly epidemic working alongside of it, an epidemic that has been around long before COVID-19 reared its ugly head. It's an epidemic that has taken over 900,000 lives since 1999. It's an epidemic that no mask, no vaccine, no lockdown is going to stop. And that epidemic is the opioid crisis. During 2020, most states and cities reported an increase in both non-fatal and fatal overdoses. As a matter of fact, fatal overdoses increased in every state with the exception of New Hampshire and South Dakota. There was an increase of at least 30% in 24 states and the District of Columbia. Then Arizona, California, Colorado, Illinois, Texas, and Washington had an increase of more than 35% during the first 8 months of 2020. And overall, the United States had a 33% increase in overdose deaths. To help put this in perspective, there was fewer than 7,200 overdose deaths in 1970 during the height of the heroin epidemic. Then around 9,000 in 1988 during the height of the crack epidemic. Then in 2019, the opioid epidemic helped take the lives of 70,630, and that number went up by over 30% in 2020 to 93,331 overdose deaths. That's about 250 deaths per day, or 11 every hour. 93,331. That's a 1,200% increase from the deaths of the heroin epidemic in 1970. 93,331 is almost double the amount of American lives taken during the Vietnam War. About 75% of the overdose deaths in 2020 involved opiates, and that was largely down to fentanyl-laced substances. And while we're on the subject of fentanyl, I do have a video coming soon where I will be discussing fentanyl and its dangers, so please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. That way you can be notified when I upload this video. And while you're doing that, please go ahead and like this video so it can reach more people. So what caused the spike in overdose deaths in 2020? Well, many experts say isolation was a major contributor, and many users and former users have backed this claim up. For example, one user named Orman was quoted as saying the following: "I know a lot of people who have made progress in their recovery, then relapse. Being alone and isolated in your living space without any reason to leave the house is enough for someone struggling with addiction to relapse and dig themselves into a hole." While quarantining and self-isolating was arguably important for public safety, it can influence anxiety and depression. As Carla, a psychiatrist at UC San Diego Health, said, "People can't be around friends, go outside to gyms and restaurants, all of those everyday activities that might mitigate anxiety and depression. Addiction thrives in secrecy, and in the pandemic you have more people alone and not accountable to friends and family." And this is even backed up by the CDC, who said approximately 75% of young adults experienced some form of mental symptom within the first 3 months of the pandemic restrictions, and over 25% of them seriously contemplated suicide. The pandemic restrictions made the opiate crisis worse and escalated overdose deaths. The stay-at-home orders led people to use drugs alone, which is always dangerous, because if they overdose alone, there's no one there to administer naloxone or to call 911 for help. The lockdown also made treatment harder to get. Some treatment centers shut down, and some for good due to budget cuts. 12-step programs shut down, and recovery meetings went virtual. Yet as Tim, the director of the Berkeley Day Report Center, said, "Addiction makes you want to be alone. A large part of recovery is establishing a face-to-face connection in person, not on a video." And he continued by saying, "For a large majority of this population, in my opinion, the COVID restrictions, everything shutting down, is far more dangerous than COVID." A great example of this is Colin M., who lost his brother Jordan to an overdose on the day before Jordan's 39th birthday, and Jordan died from heroin and fentanyl. And Colin said this about his brother's death: "It was really difficult for me to think about the way in which Jordan died. He was alone and suffering emotionally, and he felt like he had to use again." To give a great example of the lockdown's impact on overdoses, you have to look no further than San Francisco, which was the first city in the United States to declare a coronavirus emergency in February 2020. And San Francisco did this weeks before any other major city in the United States. As a result, they only had 257 deaths from COVID-19 in 2020, which was one of the lowest per capita COVID-19 death rates in the nation. On the flip side of that, however, there was 697 accidental drug overdose deaths in San Francisco in 2020. Just shy of triple the COVID deaths. To put that in context, there was 259 overdose deaths in 2018 and 441 overdose deaths in 2019. The pandemic is not the only thing to blame, though. As I already stated, 69,710 of the overdose deaths in the United States in 2020 was from opiates, largely due to fentanyl-laced substances. Much of this is down to the fact that suppliers and dealers are increasing their supply of heroin and other substances, including fake prescription pills, by lacing it with fentanyl because it's cheaper to produce. And that's really dangerous for anyone who's using those substances because most people won't have a tolerance for fentanyl, and one pill could kill them, and it has happened many times. The stress of the COVID-19 pandemic hit everyone, but the added stress of isolation, job loss, financial stress, and psychological uncertainty took a toll on those in recovery, even those that have been in recovery for years. As Megan M., a case manager with Prevention Point Philadelphia, said, the pandemic may be the ultimate gateway drug. Many of the overdose deaths in 2020 can likely be down to the fact that so many people relapsed and tried to use the same amount before, as well as the fentanyl-laced substances. And many people did relapse. One woman even told Rolling Stone that she had not seen so many people in New York relapse since the 9/11 attacks in 2001. Simon R., who relapsed in 2020, said the following: I relapsed because I found myself thinking about life after the lockdown, and I felt like I couldn't imagine a future in which I could be happy. Now I can imagine a future in which I'm not miserable. I'm afraid, and I just don't know how to change it. Will the end of 2021 bring with it another huge increase in overdose deaths in the United States? I certainly hope not, but with the rising deaths related to fentanyl, it really wouldn't surprise me. If you want a better understanding of why overdoses occur, please check out the video on the right side of the screen. And if you want to see future videos, including videos that'll help you better understand fentanyl and other substances, please consider subscribing to Stop the Stigma and hitting that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload these videos. And if you have found any value in this video, please give it a like so we can reach more people. And remember, there is hope.